Remember how I said that after the quarantine the courts are going to be packed? Well, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, the courts have already been packed, the parking lot has already been full, it's cleared out a little bit already, but I'm sure it's going to fill up again. So, what are you gonna do? What's up guys, it's Tony from Streetball Strategies, where we use strategy to build your streetball legacy. Remember how back in June I was complaining about how cold it was in Michigan in the summertime? Well, it's been in the 90s for the last week. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, it's 80 degrees plus high humidity, and so today we're going to talk about how to play in extreme heat. Now, the definition of extreme heat is kind of subjective, right? So, full disclosure, I love the heat. As long as I'm planning to sweat, I love to sweat. But for those of you who just don't like the heat and just don't deal with it well, spoiler alert, I don't really have a magic bullet for you guys. Nothing I can say or do is going to make you comfortable with being in the heat. But I can help you here and there with some small things to help hopefully make it a little bit easier on you. But for those of you in the vast majority who don't really like playing in the heat but will do it anyway just because you love ball, well, let's see if we can help you guys become more efficient in playing in extreme heat. So let's start with off the court kind of things, okay? Let's start with hydration. You knew it was going to be first. And we've covered hydration a little bit in the past. If you've seen those videos, you guys know my general rules of thumb, which are no sugar, no caffeine. You don't need either one. It's just going to dehydrate you even faster. Stay away from sugar, stay away from caffeine. Whenever you're refueling out here, whether it's food or drinks, you want to keep it as simple as possible. And though they are kind of expensive, I would encourage you guys to invest in some kind of thermos. This is my Yeti thermos. I use this every day, 365 days a year. As you guys can see, it says Yeti right there on the handle. I use this every day. It works really well, which is why I don't mind making the investment. It keeps things cool longer, it keeps things warm longer. And it really does work, so I don't mind the investment. I use it every day. The great thing about these is that because it keeps things cooler longer, you don't have to use as much ice. If you're not using as much ice, you can fill up the thermos more with more water, keeping you hydrated for longer on the court. Also, it doesn't come with this silicone sleeve that it has on here. The metal is pretty smooth and slippery if your hands are wet or sweaty, so I got this sleeve off of Amazon. It's silicone. It really helps to just quickly grab it and go, whereas if your hands were sweaty or wet, it can be hard to get a good grip on it. And so I'll link both of these down in the description below. Also, another rule of thumb about staying hydrated is to only do it when you need it. Only drink when you need to. You don't have to be constantly hydrating yourself. You really only need to do it when you feel thirsty. Now let's touch quickly on what you should be wearing, because it does make a difference in such high heat. Obviously, the less clothing possible, the more comfortable you're going to be. The less stuff you have on your arms and legs, material, clothing, the more comfortable you will theoretically be. And also wear light colors. Light colors will reflect sunlight off of themselves, whereas dark colored clothing will absorb the sunlight, thus keeping you warmer. Also, you might want to think about having some kind of sweat prevention or something to deal with sweating in terms of wristbands or headbands, something to keep the sweat off of your face and out of your eyes. The less sweat you have to deal with on your face, the less distracting it will then be, and we're big about minimizing distraction as much as possible. Let's go over some rest and recovery things. because of the heat being so strong, because of it being so constant, that when you're playing, you're probably going to be in a hurry to get off the court so you can rest, recuperate, get a drink, get in the shade. I encourage all of that, but slow down on the sitting and especially with the laying in between games. Especially in high heat, you're putting your body under even more pressure than you usually would be on the court. Your heart rate's probably a little higher, your body temperature is probably a little higher, your blood pressure is probably a little bit higher. So when you're done with the game, instead of retreating immediately to the sideline and pretty much collapsing to get rest and recovery in between games, give yourself a couple minutes to sort of walk around leisurely a little bit and let your body normalize. Let your heart rate come back to normal, let your blood pressure come back to normal, let your breathing come back to normal, and then sit down or then lay down. But don't do it right away. If you go from playing all out in a game to immediately laying on the ground, you are shocking your body. And it may not feel like very much when you're younger, but it's still doing harm to your body regardless of how young and or in shape you are. So to save yourself that shock to your system, make sure that when games are over, instead of immediately resting, that you walk around a little bit to let your body normalize. Also, on the topic of resting and recovery, there is a strategy, there is a technique that can be used if you are someone who is looking to separate yourself from the other players on the court. If you're watching these videos, if you're familiar with this channel, you know that it is designated for people who are not as talented as everybody else. For those of you who are not as far along on the court in terms of experience and skills and ability as everybody else. And so even if that's the case for you, even if you're clearly not one of the better players on the court, you still want to send the message that you mean business and that you're serious. You want to find ways to separate yourself from those other players to let them know that even though you're not quite on their level yet, you're serious about getting there. So the strategy I'm about to tell you about, I only encourage you to do this if you are completely comfortable and completely confident that you can do it safely. If there's any doubt in your mind whatsoever that you can't do this safely or comfortably or confidently, do not do this. But what I'm talking about is in between games, when everybody else goes over to the sideline to get some water, to sit down, to rest and recover and try to recuperate for the next game in such high heat, instead of you going with them, you stay on the court. And you don't just stay on the court and stand there and wait for them. You keep the ball with you, you keep shooting around, even if it's just like free throws or something. You show them that even though they need to rest, even though they need to recover, you're such a serious player that you're going to stay on the court and you're going to keep shooting and you're going to keep yourself warm. You're not going to drink anything, you're not going to sit down, you're not going to recover. You're going to stay on the court, you're going to wait for them, because that's how serious you are about basketball and that's how much you want the next game to start. You're not even going to have a drink in such extreme heat. And what you're hoping for is that, first of all, most of the people that see you doing this, they are not going to get or understand or care about what you're trying to present to them in terms of your message, your signal, which is that you do mean business out here. Most people just aren't going to get it. They're just not going to care. But what you're hoping for is that a person here, a person there, someone is going to see you being the only one that's staying on the court in between games, and that in the back of their mind they're going to link you and associate you with that behavior, that everybody else is resting but you're not. Everybody's recovering, everybody's taking a drink, but you're not, because apparently that's how hardcore and serious you are. What you're hoping for is that somebody sees that, somebody makes that connection in their mind, even if it's only subconsciously. And then in the future, when they see you again, when they play with you again, Hopefully if they discuss you with their other players, their other friends, they will bring that up to them. And it's small things like that that really help to build your legacy. You're kind of building a legend around yourself by doing small things like that. And it's small things like that repeated over time that are really going to go far to help build your legacy. But again, only do this kind of strategy if you can do it safely, because one of the tenets of this strategy, it relies heavily on the fact that if you're going to do that, if you're going to stay on the court, if you're not going to rest, you're not going to recover, you're not going to take a drink, you're not going to go hide in the shade, if you do that, you have to do it the entire time you're playing with those people. You can't do it every now and then. You have to do it the entire time. So if that means the whole day, that means the whole day. Now, of course, once those people leave, and if you have the court to yourself again, then of course you can go rest and recover and get a drink and all of that. But as long as those people are on the court with you, you cannot let them see weakness. You cannot let them see any kind of cracks in your resolve to stay on the court and not to recover and recuperate. You have to do it the entire time. But only do it if you feel safe and comfortable physically doing it. Now, as far as on the court stuff, like I said, I don't really have a magic bullet for you if you genuinely can't stand being in high extreme heat. But let's talk about small things you can do to try to make it easier on yourself. And basically that has to do with pacing, how you play the game with energy and intensity. Usually under normal circumstances, normal weather, I would encourage you to, if you're on the court, you play as hard as you can. You play every dribble as hard as you can with the most effort and energy that you can. But under extreme heat, especially if you're not good with dealing with the heat, what you could try to do is start out slowly and then naturally let your body build up in terms of energy and intensity and effort. There's no reason to come out of the gate swinging if you're just going to burn yourself out immediately because of the heat. So what you could do is let yourself start out being relaxed at the beginning of the game and then build up your energy and intensity and effort as the game goes on. Alternatively, you could also pick your spots, meaning maybe you play the majority of the game sort of hanging back and being relaxed, but when you see openings, that's when you explode with energy and effort. And one of the benefits of doing that is that when you are sort of laying back and being relaxed, you can kind of lull your opponents into a false sense of security, because when they see you not playing hard, they're going to start playing off of you. And when that happens, you're going to have more opportunities to then attack. Also, you can ramp that strategy up as well. So maybe in the beginning you only attack here and there, and then as the game goes on, as you see more and more opportunities, you will start to attack more and more. And to end this video, I want to touch on something that we talk about kind of regularly here on the channel, because I really do believe it to be effective and especially applicable when it comes to high heat. My experience with playing in high heat is usually games go one of two ways. Either people in the games try to score as fast as possible and get the game over with as quick as possible because they can't stand the heat and they want to get it over with and get back to the sideline. Or people are so affected by the heat that they can't focus properly. They're not nearly as efficient as they would be if it was just normal weather. And so they can't score as well as they normally would, and games then seem to drag on for much longer than they usually do. And in either scenario, it seems like often that games in extreme heat come down to the last shot. They seem to come down to point game, when the next point's going to win or lose a game. And I believe this to be the case because the fact of the matter is that playing basketball in extreme heat for a couple hours a day, you'll be completely fine because your body will physically adapt to the heat. It just will. The problem comes from being mentally distracted from the heat, because what's happening is the heat is beating down on you and it's so relentless that in the back of your mind you're constantly having thoughts of how terrible this feels, how much you want it to get over with, how uncomfortable it is. Because you are constantly having those thoughts, they're distracting you from your efficiency of your game. And so the question becomes, how do we quiet those thoughts? How do we get rid of those distractions? There's a term that's been popularized over the last few years known as embracing the suck, meaning the heat sucks. Everybody knows it, everybody's dealing with it, and so you're just gonna have to embrace it. You're just gonna have to accept that it's part of the game and it's part of the price you're going to pay to win this game and to build your legacy. And the more you play in the present, in the moment, the more you can just accept that fact and allow yourself to become comfortable being uncomfortable playing in such high heat. So that's what I got for you guys when it comes to playing in the heat. The best thing I think I can say is just try to enjoy it. Try to savor the fact that one day you're not going to be able to be out here at all. One day you're not going to be able to play in the high heat at all. Your career is going to be over with, you're going to be retired, you're going to have moved on, but it's situations like this that you're going to look back on and really appreciate the fact that you were able to perform well in high heat because you took the right steps. So if you guys like this video, feel free to give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you can be notified of all of my future videos, and I will see you guys next week.
I'm the hottest, all I do is turn up 100 degrees.